So I was saying this kind of closes our industry program this year. I'm really proud of the strength of the program. The pedigree of the program is getting better and better. With the co-production forum, with the work in progress, with the Gabriel Figueroa Film Fund. I really want to thank my industry team, Francisco Westendarp, the head of the industry team. You've seen him running everywhere, and his team, Lola, Tino, and everyone else. They've done an amazing job. And in this occasion, it's a true privilege to present director Adam Egoyan in this panel about Remember, his new coming film, which has an interesting financing structure, which they're gonna speak more in length, and it involves Mexico. That's why we invited as well Gerardo Gatica Gonzalez, the producer from VH5 Group, the producer for Serendipity Point Films, Robert Lantos. It's a true privilege, and Mr. Cameron Bailey, artistic director of Toronto International Film Festival, to moderate this panel. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Alonso. Thanks, everyone, for coming this afternoon. I just want to get a sense of who's in the room before we start. How many here today are filmmakers? Okay. Anybody on the sales acquisitions side of the business? All right, so it's a filmmaking group. That's good to know. We're going to get a little bit of insight into this film that these gentlemen up here are in the process of making. The shooting is done. They're in post-production right now. This will be released into the world, I think, sometime next year, and we're all very excited about it. Anytime we have a new film from any of these guys up here, we're very, very interested. Adam Egoyan, many of you will know, has established himself as really one of cinema's most original voices over the past 30 years, from his very first feature in 1984, Next of Kin, which premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, through his most recent film, The Captive, which premiered in Cannes competition just this past May. He's pursued a complex, challenging engagement with all of us who watch movies. His films include Family Viewing, Speaking Parts, Exotica, which is screening here in Los Cabos, Calendar, The Sweet Hereafter, Ararat, Citadel, Where the Truth Lies, and Devil's Knot. There's stories of desire and displacement, and of course the stories of those stories. He's won dedicated fans among cinephiles and critics around the world, and his new film is Remember, which stars Christopher Plummer and is produced by Egoyan's frequent collaborator, producer Robert Lantos. Robert Lantos' company is called Serendipity Point Films. He is Canada's most famous and most celebrated film producer. He's taken his films into Cannes competition 10 times. He's known everywhere film and TV people gather. He's the man, at least in Canada, with the very best stories from the film industry. His career goes back as far as the groundbreaking, censor-defying In Praise of Older Women, and includes David Cronenberg's Eastern Promises and Existence, Denis Arcand's film Stardom, and collaboration on 7 of Adam Egoyan's feature films, including the Oscar-nominated The Sweet Hereafter. Gerardo Gatica Gonzalez is a producer from the BHS Group. He's the co-founding partner and general director of BH5, a conglomerate of a number of Mexican production companies, including Detalle Films, Bolero Films, and La Rama. He's produced a number of films on his own, including Kite by Ralph Zeman, and 2 films by Katina Medina, Luto, and the most recent film, Contra Luz. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for being here today. I want to start, Adam, with you, and maybe just tell us a little bit, as much as you can, about Remember, why this story, why you wanted to tell this story now.
This is a remarkable script. I didn't write it. It came to me. Robert called me, told me the premise, and I didn't really get it, honestly. I said, that doesn't sound like the type of thing I'd really want to do. And then I read it, and it's exceptional. It's really a completely original take on this darkest chapter of horror in the last century. It's unexpected, and it's astounding in its originality. And from the beginning, and when it was proposed, Christopher Plummer's name came up, and I think we all understood that for this film to succeed, it had to first and foremost frame that performance, because unlike one of my own scripts, this is completely chronological. It moves from point A to point B. There's not There's no flashbacks. There's nothing to deter from the singularity of Plummer's mission, and the mission is very gripping, but not in the way you might think. And we're still trying to figure out how to talk about the film without giving it away. What I can say is that the screenwriter, Ben August, is an American who is married to a Vietnamese woman and has spent a lot of time in Vietnam, currently lives in Vietnam. The story is inspired by his experience of coming back to the U.S. and realizing the collective amnesia that existed around the Vietnam War. And he couldn't understand how something so cataclysmic could be forgotten about so soon. And that inspired this journey that he's undertaking. And it is also the last story you can tell about Holocaust in our current day. From this point on, because it's about these 85 to 90-year-old men who are survivors in various ways of this event. From here on, I think it all becomes a period piece. So that also attracted me, this idea that it's the last story that could be told in our time of this horror. And we had discussions around it. We discussed, and mostly it was around, how simple in some ways the film had to be, and how I would not, it was clear that I had to put all my auteurist sort of screenwriter impulses at bay and serve this story, knowing that what it was talking about was so close to me. Like what he's actually addressing as a writer is just so resonant and meaningful. So it was easy to become passionate about it. And I think that that's what a filmmaker needs to feel first and foremost, just this tremendous passion, because you have to convince so many people to be attached. And that's what I thought maybe, since we're talking about putting together the project, there are a number of issues that come up, but really as a filmmaker, my role is to get the talent on board.
I do want to get to that. First, I want to hear a little bit from you, Robert, about putting this project together. The screenplay came to you first. You've obviously worked with Adam on many occasions. But like you say, Adam is known as an auteur filmmaker, often writes his own screenplays. This is a different kind of project. And I'm sure you had a lot of conversations about how he would fit into it. So can you tell us a little bit about your approach to this film and what Adam's place in it was going to be?
Sure, but first I just want to say something for purposes of clarification, because I think this is, just to be clear, this film has nothing to do with Vietnam. And that's, which was not entirely clear. It's set in modern day America.
Already we disagree.
I think you're trying to say the filmmaker has a lot of experience having lived in Vietnam, but
not this, not that filmmaker over there. No,
the screenwriter.
No, but the screenwriter. What Adam was saying is that he does live. He lives in Hanoi right now, but that's the connection. No other. The story has nothing to do with Vietnam, and that's why you need to be produced. That's what.
Ladies and gentlemen, producer, director.
It's what happens in the editing room, Keep him straight, in a straight line,
He still is about Vietnam, so.
But no doubt. But for the rest of you, don't worry, you won't have to go to Hanoi. This actually, this script came to me. Usually, either a project comes to me from a writer-director like Adam, or it's something that we initiate in our company, but spend years and years developing, and sometimes go through several writers, and it's a long, laborious process. But this was neither from a filmmaker nor developed by us. It sort of appeared one day from a friend of mine in New York who said, this script I've just read has your fingerprints on it, and you have to read it. So I did, and he was right. And then trying to figure out really exactly when, it really just so happened that Adam and I were having lunch either the day after I read it or 2 days after I read it, and the conversation began. At first he, as Adam said, when I told him the story, he was kind of, his eyebrows were raised, and pretty thick eyebrows too. But then he read it. And sorry, what did you ask me?
I think that was it. I wanted to know just how Adam came on board the project.
One thing that I think we agreed on from the right off the bat was that this is the lead character in this film is a 90-year-old man. And that we needed Christopher Plummer to play this, and we couldn't. Most of the other actors we could think of who were right for the part were dead, and so that caused a kind of we had a very narrow sort of casting option, and so it was, and so we sent it to Christopher Plummer, and ever since then we have been very carefully praying for his health and welfare.
As are we all. Thank you, Robert. This is officially a Canadian-German co-production, but Mexico is involved as well. And Gerardo, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your involvement, the involvement of Mexican partners in what is essentially a truly North American production.
Yeah, sure. We came to this project as execs, financially speaking. We got the script, it was Thursday night, and we got the script from a good friend of ours, Brian Coxon and Singh, who are also involved in the film. And Brian called me and told me, you have to read the script right now. We need to talk to you guys tomorrow morning. So that's pretty much the only thing I knew about it. So we read the script, and it was just an unbelievable project. So the next day in the morning, we have a call with Brian and with CineNT, and then they told us, okay, we're pushing for Robert to let us be into the film, because Robert, I think he was a little bit, he's had a good friendship relationship with CineNT for the past 35 years or so. So he didn't want to mix business with friendship. So he told me, okay, I'm going to convince Robert to be into this project, but I need an answer from you guys right now. Are you coming with us? So after knowing that Adam was going to be directing and Robert was going to be producing with Christopher Plummer, I mean, it was the easiest decision ever. It was like, yeah, of course we're on board. And that's how we got involved in the project. We went to Toronto and meet Atom and Robert, which we had a really good relationship from the get-going, and we're really excited about the project.
Were you going to add something?
Yeah, because I think maybe it's for clarification, because the film is officially a Canada-Germany co-production, but it's actually financed by Canada, South Africa, and Mexico. And we came upon each other via the South African connection, who's an investor in the film and is an old friend of mine called Anand Singh, and he in turn brought you in. And so this is actually a sort of, the financing of this film has nothing to do with the elements in it. It is a pure and simple financial co-production structure.
Adam, as the filmmaker here, this has got to be complicated sometimes for you. This is not a screenplay that you initiated. There are many different pieces here. Because it's a German-Canadian co-production, I'm sure that there are some requirements from both countries in terms of the on-screen talent and possibly some of the key creatives as well. How do you keep your vision of what you want on screen as the final result as a filmmaker when you're essentially got all of these Lego bricks that you have to work with?
Well, I knew from the beginning, because of my obsession with Ho Chi Minh, that that finally I'd be able to make a film about Vietnamese history. Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's interesting that you would have thought that that wasn't clear, and I just have to have a show of hands. How many people thought after I talked about the film that it had anything to do with Vietnam? Oh boy! See, I am delusional because I always think, as Robert was saying, that no one would have thought it had anything to do with Vietnam, and so obviously I do need Robert's controlling power to submit me to clarity.
Or a mirror.
Or a mirror. and now I feel like incredibly self-conscious about my eyebrows, which I never have in my life. And I find that really traumatizing. As someone who has perilously thin eyebrows. Anyway. So, no, I think that part of the work I need to do is meet and convince actors and crew people to be as excited about a project as I am. And these are private conversations that you have. You hope that people respond to the script and know enough about your work that they're intrigued. But you do have to have these conversations, and those are when people talk about, do you rehearse? I mean, the rehearsals begin with the conversation about the characters that you have with your actors, and the conversations that you have with your crew about approach and how you visualize and how you see this film. So I do have a key, creative team that has been working with me for a number of years. However, because this project happened quite fast, and it wasn't really part of the cycle of films I was making, some of those people were not available. So my regular editor wasn't available, and my regular production designer wasn't available. So that meant, meeting new people and talking about things which I would normally just take for granted. And that was interesting. That was really refreshing in a sense. And then in terms of actors, it's, the conversation you have with Christopher Plummer is one thing, but the conversation, for instance, we're going to show a clip, which I think is working now, right? The clip, yeah. But it's a clip with Bruno Ganz, and we had this meeting. I was in Germany meeting a number of possibilities for the German characters in the film, and Bruno Ganz was high on our list, but when I met him in Munich, it was interesting because his agent came in to introduce him and sat me down and said, now, you're thinking about him for this role, right? And it wasn't the role I was thinking of him for. And I said, no, I was actually thinking about him for this other role. And she was, her jaw dropped, and she said, there's no way he's going to play that. It's like it's a one-day role. He doesn't do that. Don't even bring that up because he'll be insulted. Now, she wasn't even addressing the fact that he wasn't available to play this bigger role because he had another commitment. But I was in this position where I was going, okay, how do I handle this? How do I convince this actor to come on board with a role that is not the one he thinks that we're meeting about? How do I deal with this kind of hysterical agent who's alarmed that he might be insulted if I even talk about this other role? And it was told me expressly that I can't even mention this in the meeting that I'm about to have. So, that's part of my job, though, is to then, she leaves that room and she's comfortable in that she's convinced me not to mention what the agenda really is. And I have to figure out, in the course of meeting someone who is an idol of mine, whether or not I can break that code and talk about this role. So he came into the room, and it's just it's this process of having a conversation where you understand what the parameters are, what your limits are, and engaging yourself in the mythology of the actor that you're talking to. In this case, it was easy. I mean, I've adored his work, and I know his films, but I also happen to know, in my particular case, his theater work. So we started talking about theater. We started talking about, he was involved with this very famous German theater in Berlin in the 70s, the Schaubühne. We started talking about that. We started talking about his work with this obscure, maybe for some of you not so obscure, Austrian writer Thomas Bernhard, because he's been in a lot of his plays. I know that work really well. And I immediately felt we struck it off. And I felt that at that point I could say, listen, I know you're thinking that you're playing, and I broke the code. I did what the agent told me not to do. And I started talking about how excited I was about the role that you're going to get a piece of in this clip. And I talked about how I actually was finding myself performing kind of a particular role in order to get him committed to this project. And by the end of this conversation, we basically shook hands and sealed that he would be coming to play for 2 days in the movie. And it was a done deal. And I felt that, oh wow, this is a crazy part of my job. It's this, there's everything that you need to do on set in terms of organizing the day and these myriad of various questions that are thrown at you that you have to respond to. But it's about creating this relationship with the actors, because they are, as far as I'm concerned, the only people who are doing something quite mysterious and magical on set. And it always shocks me when I hear from actors about directors who are not completely focused on their work. Everything else that's technical is, lighting and sound and even design. All of those things are in the world of material concerns. But what the actor is doing in front of the camera is so profound, and you are the only audience to that. You have to be there for them, and that begins in that first conversation you have with them in a room. And they have to understand that you're going to be there for them. And so he felt that, and I was able to excite him enough to commit to that project. So that's a huge part. I mean, as these two gentlemen will talk about, their ability to find these sometimes arcane financing structures, which are so complex and so specific on certain demands and needs. My job at some level is to bring all these people on board creatively.
You didn't tell him that he was playing a Viet Cong.
No.
Yeah.
You see, now you're admitting that this was a subtext of the whole experience.
But I do, Cameron, you asked a question, and I will give you a sort of specific answer, because you asked Adam about how the German co-production impacted on the integrity of his work, essentially. And the answer is, in this film needs 3 German actors. Actually, has 3 German characters. So the integrity of the film, in fact, is enhanced by, instead of casting Hollywood actors to play Germans, we cast Germans to play Germans. That was it. That was essentially the German artistic involvement in the film.
And the sound team was German,
yes, and the Germans,
and they were really great. I mean, but that we should also talk about too. That I think that that integrity was at times challenged by this, like agents call Robert in this case more than they would call me, because I wasn't producing this film. And they would say, well, how about this client who's like a Hollywood name to play this role, and those questions have to be fielded, right? So yes, you can have this other famous actor who's also a senior actor to play a German character, but and I think technically we could have gone that way and not disrupted the co-production financing. We had some room, but we made that decision to take advantage of this and not. It wasn't just because of the technicality. I think we also wanted it to inhabit it with people who were completely authentic. Is that correct, or were we obliged to use 3?
We were not obliged. We wanted to. Remember?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you
Glad you guys are talking.
were in Vietnam.
Is that clip ready? Yeah. Okay, let's have a look at the clip. This is Bruno Gauss.
So this is just the character is Christopher Plummer's on this mission, and we think we understand what the mission is about. And then it shifts in ways that are quite surprising. But in this scene, really, it's about the beginning of this journey he's on, and it's this first meeting with a person who might possibly be responsible for having wiped out his family in the Second World War. And so let's look at the clip.
Is Rudy Kulhanda home?
Yeah, he's downstairs.
What should I do? Get your man, get him, get the note. It's a matter of life and death with him. Go ahead, down into the argument with me. Then hurry up.
Are you Rudy Kulhanda?
I told you to get
Yes, I'm Rudy Kulhanda. Who are you?
Can you turn off the television?
Do I know you?
And now, please, stand by the window.
Who are you?
Stand by the window.
I don't do anything until you tell me who you are and why you are here.
Let us not argue. Just stand by the window.